Hi everyone, today I want to show you how to use a one-step buttonhole foot, and here's what the foot looks like. So it's pretty peculiar looking. It has a little lever here that moves back and forth, and that's where you place the button that you're going to use. Clicks in there, and then this space in between here is read by a little arm that comes down from the top of your machine. So I'll just push it back up, but there it is, excuse me. Okay, and that actually goes in this space that you see right here. And then the buttonhole foot moves up and back, and it's confined to this area, which is given to it by the size of the button. Now, it clips on at the front here. So if you're not sure which way around the buttonhole foot goes, that's it. You'll notice that it has a little crosshair here marked in red, and that's what you want to center your buttonhole marks to. Do you see those little crosshairs? Okay. Now, there are many different buttonhole selection stitches on the machine. Here are some of them here. I've just chosen this straight and square one. It seems to work quite nicely for me. It's usually goes to a width of 5.5 millimeters, but I always find that I want to bring that back to about 4.5 millimeters. Otherwise, the stitching is too wide for a shirt, which is what I'm working on here today. Now, I've already stitched out a sample to see how big the buttonhole stitches out, and I discovered that it just seemed a little bit large using that button. So I found a button that's slightly smaller than the button I'm using. So you see this one, brown one's a little bit bigger than the yellow one. I don't want that buttonhole quite as big as it's stitching out, so I'm going to use this yellow button. And that's why it's a good idea to always stitch out what you're going to do, because you don't want a too big buttonhole on your shirt or whatever garment you're making. So I'm going to click it in place. Oop. Maybe I'm not. Hang on. There, okay. And I've got my arm resting in between that area that we talked about earlier. It's not in front of this metal bar, it is in behind, and it goes in between the metal bar and the plastic bar that the button forms, okay? So don't put that plastic bar in front or it's not gonna work. Now, I have my shirt front here, and I've already done a bunch of buttonholes, and I have marked where the button starts in the buttonhole. Now, the buttonhole foot always goes backwards, okay? It doesn't go forwards into the buttonhole, it goes down to the bottom of the buttonhole. So where I want to start is the top of the buttonhole, so that when it stitches, it's going to go like this. It's not going to go up, it's going to go down. So I've only marked the top of each buttonhole from my pattern. That's all I really need. Now, this marking that I've made, I'm hoping you can see it, this blue mark, is a little crosshair, and I want to match that to the crosshair on the actual foot itself. So I bring my piece of work there, and first I just slide it in for the top edge, and then it's kind of easier to find the downward line. And I know you're not going to be able to see that, but I can. And then what I also want to do is look at the space on either side of the buttonhole foot. Does that look about even? I don't want my buttonhole to be off center, right? So that looks pretty good. I can maybe just wiggle it over a tiny bit. Okay, now my machine's ready to go. And one thing you want to be very, very careful of is everything level at the back of your machine. So my machine has this acrylic table, and I was finding it was riding a bit high, and that caused the buttonhole foot to catch on it, and then it would kind of stumble and it wouldn't stitch any further. Everything has to be level so that the buttonhole foot can travel back and forth. If it gets hung up on something, your buttonhole is going to be ruined. So be really careful about that. And you don't want anything pushing at the back of your work either, because it'll get kind of stuck up on the bulk of the project. If you're working against a wall or something, you have to be careful. I've got a lot of space here, so that's not a problem. So let's just get started. I just tip it a little bit there. That looks good. And we're going to stitch our buttonhole out. Oh, wouldn't you know it. So my needle has come unthreaded. So I'm going to rethread it and we'll start over. So to start over, this is actually good. I want to just, it's already started the stitching, right? So I want to go back to the beginning. So I'm going to just go out of that stitch, go back into that stitch, make sure my width is good, thread my needle. Automatic needle threader is busted, so you're going to have to bear with me here as I thread the needle. There. Okay. And I'm just going to line it up again so you get to practice with me again. So I go to that first height mark and I drop the foot, making sure everything looks even on either side. I'm going to hang on to my thread this time so we don't lose it. There, okay. And I'm going to cut my thread just a little bit shorter so it doesn't get stitched in. And now the foot does its work. And I'm not holding on to it. Nothing's catching at the back here, so it's free to do the whole buttonhole without, you know, any kind of interruption. So it goes down the left side first, and then it stitches the left side, and then it travels up the right side with a straight stitch and then does the zigzag on the way back. And at the end of the buttonhole it bar tacks. And then the machine will just automatically stop when it's done. It slows down and it stops. So there is my beautiful buttonhole, nicely centered, and it's ready for me to slash and open. Now that we've got all of our buttonholes stitched, okay, it's time to put the buttons on. And most machines come with a button fitting foot. So there it is. And what you do is you take your button and you slide it. There's kind of a little ledge there, and you slide the button into that foot so that the holes of the button are kind of in that position there, ready for a kind of a zigzag stationary stitch that puts them in place. So I'll put the foot on the machine. Now, of course, you can add the buttons as the foot is also on the machine. All right, so just going to adjust it a little bit there so that my buttonholes line up. I don't know if you can see that or not. And I will take my garment. Oops. And this is a cuff we're working on now. And I have made a little dot to mark where the button belongs, but I need something a little more visible. So I'm just going to use a marker to make an X there. That will help me center the button. I go into my machine's stitches, and on my Babylock Crescendo, it's kind of near the end of the button stitches, and this is it here, and it's just a stationary stitch that goes back and forth. Now there is a width adjustment here, so if you're working with a really big button or a really small button, you'll want to adjust how wide that zigzag is, but this will work out fine at 4.5. So what I do is I just center over my X, drop my foot, and I will test it once by turning the hand wheel towards myself to make sure I'm not striking the button itself, because that's not very good. And oops, I forgot to raise my buttonhole lever from sewing the buttonholes. Okay, so this is a 4-hole button, and after it's done stitching, it just automatically stops. So I'm going to put my needle up. I'm going to raise my foot, and I'm just going to push that button back a little bit now. Okay. Drop my foot, stick my needle in to start it off, and there we go. Then I'm going to pull it forward to remove the button. And I can either stitch these threads to the back or just clip them off, and we're done. So let's do the other side just to show you one more time. This shirt is for my husband who's filming, so exciting for him. Getting a new shirt. So I've marked my button placement and grab my actual button, put it into the foot there. Center it. Test by just turning my hand wheel, and that's good. Lift my foot, lift my needle, push the button back a little bit, drop the foot, check the needle striking properly, and finish sewing. Oops, cut my thread. And trim those threads off. So, here we go. Shirt done. I will now present it to hubby. Here you go, hun.